WYAB Airways. And now, the host of The Full Story, Matthew Bishop.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back here to The Full Story on WYAB 103.9 on this Valentine's Day, February 14th. What an interesting day we come out to you. So, as everybody is, I guess if you're traveling around, I don't know if you don't really travel for Valentine's Day, but you'll be traveling to restaurants and whatnot and grocery stores if you plan on making dinner for your Valentine today. Always a fun time to do those things. And, it's very, it's a very commercial style holiday, but you know what? It's always good to celebrate things like that, whether it's commercial or not. It doesn't hurt to get out there with your Valentine. So hope everybody is doing that today, or getting ready, getting prepared at this point. But while you do that, I got some news to talk to you about, and that's what we're going to do. So a couple different things that I want to discuss. So last weekend, I did not discuss anything about the Nancy Guthrie case, frankly, because I think it's way overexposed. It's getting covered literally nonstop for the last few weeks. In fact, even interrupting the Olympics, which has upset a lot of people. So that's the angle that I want to talk about today. Is kind of a couple. I'm gonna give you a little bit of updates on the trial. I'm sure you've heard everything. I'm not going to spend too much time on that, but I will speak about it just for a little bit, just to try to put us in the right mindset. But more importantly, it's two things I want to cover in that case. Number one is the amount of resources and everything that's being put towards this missing persons case, compared to other cases, right, that aren't related, that don't have who don't have daughters who are celebrities, and the amount of attention it's being put on by the law enforcement agencies and the FBI and such things. And then, in the same guard, in the same aspect, how much the media is putting on it, and whether it's too much, whether people are absolutely tired of it, and if it's just been overexposed. Because again, there's not a whole lot of information. Like I said, I'm going to cover the new information, which is not much, and I can show you how quickly you can cover it because it takes about 10 minutes to cover the new information. And they talk about it. We're on a 24-hour news cycle. You got all these dedicated news stations. I get it, but they talk about it non-stop. Again, a 10-minute update they'll talk about for 5 hours, right? And just looking at, the truck just moved. It moved. The truck the truck that came to arrest people moved 10 feet. We got to talk about that. What does it mean? Let's bring in the experts. Let's bring in former FBI agent so-and-so to talk about what they mean when they move a truck 10 meters, and what is his opinion on what that could mean for the future of this case and how it could change everything, right? That's how they cover it. It's like, this is nothing. And it's just a bunch of nothing sauce every single time. So we're gonna talk about that coverage, as it's just everywhere at that point. And if people are getting tired of it, especially when you start doing things like interrupting the Olympics, which only happens once every 4 years. So we're going to talk about that. I also want to talk about DHS funding and how the Republicans have really screwed the pooch on this one, and really got outmaneuvered again by the Democrats in regards to this funding. And it just, like, none of it played out very well for the Republicans, and how any of this ran. You have ICE mostly pulling out of Minnesota, and then that doesn't do anything, and they're still not going to fund DHS. Every other part of the government is funded except that, so it gives the Democrats no reason to. The Democrats are okay with that being shut down. They're okay with the whole Department of Homeland Security being shut down. So why would they do anything? If you're a Democrat, I wouldn't vote for anything, right? I would never vote to fund it, especially since Donald Trump defunded a lot of the programs they like. So as payback, at the very least, they don't care about safety or anything. Just never fund it. So we're going to talk about where we're standing in regards to DHS funding, because it's again, it's a very the path that we have taken to this point has just been absolutely ridiculous. Also, moving to international news, interesting kind of interesting kind of thing about what Russia and these kind of people are capable of. Russia has used a poisoned dart frog to kill someone, or essentially the toxin to kill an opposition leader. Really like movie type stuff. We're going to talk about that in just a minute, and as later on in the show, as well as updates talking about internationally, as well as updates of what's going on in Iran. Of course, a few weeks ago, or a couple weeks ago, we talked about the rising pressure there in Iran, the rising amount of people protesting, and all of a sudden it just kind of got shut off. So what happened? It's just interesting how these stories can just disappear. Another great example of that, of stories that just disappear, especially they don't fit the narrative of what the mainstream media wants, was the mass shooting in Canada by what was it was initially wildly reported. It was everywhere. There's mass shooting in Canada, and then they found out that the subject who committed the crime was a transgender individual. And once that came out, and it didn't quite fit the narrative that neither the Canadian nor American media want, all of a sudden you don't hear about it. It was gone. Like, oh, they announced it was a transgender person, and then poof, no more story. I mean, it was crazy. Like, you couldn't even like go down to try to find it. So we're going to talk about that story as well, and what the update is on that, because you can't hear it anywhere else, right? I mean, this was a pretty big mass shooting in Canada, especially one that hasn't, especially one that, especially one that killed so many people in a country that doesn't typically see those. So pretty big news. And again, it was just gone. Like, one day it was there, it almost immediately announced it was a transgender suspect, gone. It was one of the craziest things I've seen in burying stories. I mean, no follow up whatsoever. At the top of the hour, we will be talking with our good friend Joe on a few different sports updates. Of course, with the Olympics going on, a couple updates with that, especially with the big flop of Ilya Malinin, who is the American figure skater who was probably considered the most shoe-in for a gold medal almost in the history of the Winter Olympics, is how good he was. And the shows the sport is anything can happen in a sport. I mean, this guy, if you weren't following the Olympics, he's pretty much like the LeBron James of figure skating. If LeBron James was a 5'9" white guy who was 145 pounds, but it was just an interesting thing to think how on any day in a sport, the guy had won 13 consecutive competitions going into it, and then the one you lose is the biggest one. It's just the nature of sports. So he's going to give us updates on some of the Olympics, what's going on there, as well as in Ole Miss news, the quarterback for Ole Miss suing for another year of eligibility. So he's going to bring us updates and news on that. So we have quite a lot to talk about in these next couple of hours. We are streaming live on YouTube and Rumble. You can go to either one of those platforms. Type in The Full Story. You'll find us streaming right there if you want to see this beautiful radio face on there. As well as you can go to our website, regulatorsproductions.com, click on The Full Story, and you'll see the links there as well. And you can peruse at your leisure, or you can just listen on good old FM radio, which is still, to me, the pinnacle of talk. Is still being on FM radio. Despite all the podcasts that are out there, there's still, I think, nothing better than listening to something on the radio. If you want to call in during the break, number 601-879-0002. You can call in at any time, especially if you have any kind of stories you want to talk about, something you want me to look at. I'm always willing to look at something. You guys always bring up good things to me about that, something you've heard, something that you're not sure about. I'd be more than happy to try to look and see if it's fake news or what the actual truth behind it is, as much as I can in the time that I have with you guys. So again, that number is 601-879-0002. But keep it tuned to the full story on WYAB 103.9.
WYAB.
Hi, everyone. This is Matt Wazlowski, owner and general manager of 1039 WYAB. How much money does the state of Mississippi spend on advertising? A little over $10 million each and every year. Apparently, some people think that it's vitally important for the state of Mississippi to promote the Memorial Stadium, the Department of Marine Resources, soybean and rice products, MDOT, the State Fair, and the worst category of all, miscellaneous advertising expenditures for who knows what. And who pays for it all? In most cases, you, the taxpayer. I find that absolutely abhorrent. That's why 1039 WYAB refuses to accept advertising dollars from state government agencies. If you ever do hear a state agency advertising on WYAB, we're not getting paid for it. We stay on the air due to the support of the many businesses that you hear advertising every day on 1039 WYAB. So I only ask that you please tell our advertisers that you appreciate their support of 1039 WYAB. And keep listening.
I'm speaking with Lee Bounds of Rapid Rate Mortgage. How does real estate agent Rita Jensen succeed when time is of the essence?
In today's market, it is so important to communicate and close on time. Typically have 30 days to close, get a home inspection, appraisal, title work, that kind of thing is a mortgage process. And a realtor relationship is so important. With a realtor like Rita Jensen with Remax Connection, she helps us to close on time.
RitaJensen.net.
At Sunkissed Tan and Wellness on Highway 49 in Flora, we specialize in providing exclusive tanning services and premium beauty products tailored for women. Our mission at Sunkissed is to enhance your natural beauty, offer expert advice, and create a personalized experience. At Sunkissed Tan and Wellness, step into our oasis and let us illuminate your beauty. Ask about our membership program. Find us on Facebook at Sunkissed Tan and Wellness or online at sunkissedtanandwellness.org.
Would you like to get the hell out of your life? If you do, we can help. Listen to life-changing stories of faith from ordinary people. Our guests share how they discovered hope, freedom, and God's amazing grace, and today are living a life of freedom with purpose. The show is called Get the Hell Out of Your Life with your host, Ron Myers. Heard every Saturday morning at 7 and 7:30 right here on 1039 WYAB. It can also be heard on your favorite podcast platform.
The new year is off to a fast start, but you can't keep up if your vehicle is sidelined. Get to Mazda of Jackson and take advantage of these super deals before time runs out. Get 1.9% financing for 63 months on all 2025 Mazda CX-5s and 2026 CX-90s, CX-50s, and Mazda 3s with approved credits, and get 1-year maintenance included in your new vehicle purchase. Don't wait another minute to experience Mazda's exhilarating performance, top-notch safety, and reliability. Online at MazdaofJackson.com or visit I-55 Frontage Road.
The Township Jazz Festival is on again this year, so make your plans for Saturday, April 11th to bring the family and make a day of it. This year, as always, they're keeping it free. 8 hours of phenomenal jazz talent at the Township on Highland Colony Parkway near Fusion Coffee House. Covered seating is provided, but lawn chairs and blankets are welcome. No tents, please. You can look for the info at townshipjazzfestival.com. Our flag was still there. The official 250th celebration flag is available at a complete flag source on I-55 North in Jackson. It's just one way you can show your appreciation for the greatest country on earth. Flags for all occasions. International and state flags too. Flagpole construction available. You can check it out at CompleteFlags.com. A complete flag source, I-55 North in Jackson.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back here to the full story on WYAB 103.9 as we get into our first story. And I'm breaking down to talk about the the Guthrie case as Nancy Guthrie case as again, it's just covering the news everywhere. So I want to give you a couple updates. One of them, which is kind of ridiculous, but and again, I want to talk about the impact of the coverage of it, which I think is a more interesting topic to discuss. So just a couple of updates. So a Pima County SWAT team and the FBI executed a search warrant in a Tucson area residence late Friday, approximately 2 miles from Nancy Guthrie's home. At least 3 people were reportedly detained in connection to the operation, but none have been confirmed as suspects in Guthrie's disappearance. Local authorities and the FBI also detained a man following a traffic stop in a Culver's restaurant parking lot in Tucson in connection to a warrant served on the nearby home. And a gray Range Rover was searched and towed from the parking lot. However, after all of those arrests, the sheriff is now saying that no arrest and no remain in custody after the major operation. So again, a lot of people being brought in, none of them staying arrested. And here's the best part: the FBI has released a description of the suspect. So if you know this person, please call into the FBI because you're definitely going to be able to recognize them based on this description. This is based on the if you've probably seen the ring camera footage of the suspect in front with the ski mask in the early morning hours of February 1st. And the suspect, here's how he's described, is described as a male between 5'9" and 5'10" with an average build and seen carrying a black backpack. So if you know someone, if you know a man, one who is between 5'9" and 5'10", so the average size for a man, and is of average build, and he may have a black backpack, there's your criminal. I mean, does it get any more? I mean, he's average height, average build, average looks, probably average eyes. You know, it's like he's the most typical man that there is. And it's just like he's average in everything. It could be anyone. That could be me. I guess I'm the guy that was there because I am a man between 5'9" and 5'10" and of average build, and I do have a black backpack. That makes me guilty. I really hope they're going to really narrow down the pool of suspects with that amazing description. I mean, it's like, who do you think? Like, how are you going to narrow it down there? What's the profile on that one? Well, not only is he of average height, of average build, he has average interest. He likes football and baseball, and he has an average car. He drives a Toyota Camry, white, of course, and he has an average job of working in a just working at the local insurance agency where he does insurance sales and such. So if you know of that person who is in the average job of sales with the average car and the average looks and the average height, then you probably have your man. I mean, it's just, I mean, what an amazing. Can we have a police sketch of that, please? That would just be. I saw that. I saw that description. I was like, man, that is some awesome work right there, guys. Good job. Really going to find them. But the FBI now is increasing its reward to $100,000 for information leading to the location of Nancy Guthrie or the arrest of her kidnappers or anybody involved in her disappearance. And that's what I wanted to talk about first is the FBI and all of these local agencies and how much resources they are putting to finding this individual. And you can honestly say that someone who does not have a celebrity daughter would not receive the same attention. In fact, I was talking with a friend of mine who's a former FBI agent, and they were telling me that in a lot of Indian reservations, the FBI doesn't even assist them with their missing persons, because hey, who cares about missing Indians? So they don't even try to do anything there. But you have Nancy Guthrie, who is the mother of someone, and they're going to put all the resources in the world towards it. And the police in the area, it's probably a great time to be robbing something in Pima, Arizona, because apparently all the police are putting all their attention to this one case. And I get it. It is a horrible case for the Guthrie family if they are truly innocent. It is, and because you can't put anything, rule anything out at this point, right? You can't rule out that her family planned this, right? All of those things have to be considered. And it's obviously a horrible situation if they are innocent. But at the same time, this happens every single day. People get taken, women get taken, and there's missing persons that occur. It's just it happens. It happens all the time. And of course, right, news can't cover. I get it, right? News can't cover every story. And I'm not saying this story should not have been covered. What I'm saying is 24 hours a day for the last, 2 weeks essentially is absolutely ridiculous. And people are getting tired of it. Especially when they interrupted the Olympics, the live streaming of the Olympics, to talk about an update that wasn't an update, because there are no real updates on this case, right? And to interrupt the Olympics that people have been waiting, I don't know, 4 years to see, and they can't see it live. Imagine that, just interrupting your favorite sport, and it's like, this is more important because Savannah Guthrie works for NBC, so this is important. Part of this goes back to this same self-importance that most of these celebrities have, right? And NBC probably thinks, hey, she's well beloved by all Americans. This is what Americans care about. They care about this more than anything. They really don't. I hate to break it to you. Like, again, it's when it first happens, absolutely, like, tell us the story, but people don't care enough to hear about it every single time they turn on the news. And that's the reason I didn't cover it last Saturday, because there's nothing really to cover. But at this point, like I said, we're getting into 2 weeks in here, and it's just getting ridiculous with the amount of coverage. It's like, we get it, okay? Like, it'll be a lot more if you just back off a little bit, and because they're just sitting there, nothing. And again, it's just a bunch of nothing. And from the FBI's perspective, it makes things that much harder when you're releasing all this nothing to the media, and then the people start going crazy. Unless you want to release things to purposely put off the alleged suspect, then otherwise, like, the media doesn't help you in that regard. So all this coverage doesn't help the investigation. So it's just in Savannah Guthrie, I'd figure she'd tell NBC, it's like, hey, let's back off a little bit and let the investigators do their jobs. But then you have investigators who just want to be in front of the camera, which doesn't help, right? They think, oh, this is my time in the spotlight. I'm going to make sure that I get it. Both local and FBI, who wants to. This is how good I am. Look how important I am in this country right now. So it's a lot of self-importance on a lot of people, from the victim side, from the law enforcement side. And it's like, you know what, let's back up and let's just do our professional jobs of doing this investigation. And then, you know what, media, you'll know something when someone is actually arrested. How about that? But no, it is literally, like I said, the police, they blinked. Oh my God, why are the police blinking right now? Is it a secret message? It's a secret message. They must be getting someone. And then the FBI goes, we didn't have any secret messages, but we did identify 4.5 million people in the local area that fit the description. So we have narrowed our suspects down to those 4.5 million people, and so we are zeroing in on the suspect. Right? It's like I said, it goes both ways. But like I said, it's just getting a little bit tiring with this coverage, and I think the American people are getting tired of it as well. All right, we're going to take another break right here. When we get back, we're going to talk about DHS funding, because I think it's an important topic about how the Republicans have been outmaneuvered. If you want to call in during the break, number 601-879-0002, but keep it tuned to the full story on WYAB 103.9. All right, gentlemen, welcome back here to the full story on WYAB 103.9. It seemed like a new song they put on my on one of my bumpies. I don't think we've heard that one before, or maybe I'm just paying attention to something else. But the next thing I want to talk about is another partial government shutdown. In this case, the shutdown only affects one department, the Department of Homeland Security, as their funding lapses as of last night. Which marks, of course, the third but smallest government shutdown since Donald Trump took office last January. Not January of last year, I should say. So this shutdown is probably going to last longer than the 4-day partial shutdown that ended last week, as the White House Republicans and Senate Democrats negotiate on proposed immigration reforms. Most House and Senate lawmakers have actually departed Washington for a scheduled week-long recess. Of course, they have. What's the point of trying to come to a deal? However, Senate Majority Leader John Thune said that he would call lawmakers back to Washington in the event that negotiations come to an agreement, but do not cancel the break entirely. Because why not? Why would you, in your job, can you imagine? It's like, we're coming down to a big deal. Let's take a break. Let's take a break. How long should we take a break? Let's do a week. How about that? Let's just take a week vacation, everyone. I know you got to do other things. Let's go do it because they got to go run for office. Obviously, there's midterms, so they got to go campaign. Let's not worry about doing your job. You got to campaign, which is the most important job of especially a House of Representatives, is to campaign. It's much more important than any other job that you have. Like representing your people in the government. That's not important. What's important is to make sure you continue to get elected every 2 years. So they got to take a recess for that. So that is what they're doing at the moment, while DHS has lost all of its, or has no funding, I should say, to continue its missions. Democrats rejected the White House's latest offer on Thursday, with Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer labeling it not serious, plain and simple. Democrats' demands for tightening warrant requirements, unmasking of federal immigration officers, and ending roving patrols are largely being rejected by Republicans. We spoke about those requirements I believe it was last week. We talked about those in detail and the problems with each one of those things. Trump has added that he, quote, knows what Democrats want, but declined to offer details. He said on Friday as he left the White House, "You always have to protect our law enforcement. They've done a great job. Remember, they've taken out hundreds of thousands of criminals out of our country." So like I said, unlike the record-setting 43-day full government shutdown, this only applies to the one department only, which is pretty rare. You don't normally see that. And this is because the deal that they created last week, essentially funded everything but DHS. And it still blows my mind why the Republicans would agree to something like that. Because you essentially just hand the biggest card to the Democrats. The Republicans in this instance have no leverage at all. They have absolutely zero leverage. So DHS accounts for about 3% of the U.S. federal budget, and the vast majority of employees in the department will be required to work without pay. So the two agencies in the DHS that's obviously in the news recently is Border Patrol and ICE, Immigration Customs Enforcement. So those are the two that affect. But there's a lot of other things that are in the DHS, including the TSA, the Transportation Security Administration, FEMA, Federal Emergency Management Agency, right? The people who help you during disasters. The Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA. If you work in the federal government, you're pretty familiar with them, as well as the Secret Service. So, and I forgot also the Coast Guard. I forgot to throw the Coast Guard in there. Now the Coast Guard is a little bit interesting funding wise, because if they had to do a mission, they can fall under the Department of Defense under wartime. So there's a interesting thing they could do possibly. But the Coast Guard is important for literally, like it says, the Coast Guard, just like Border Patrol protects our border. They're there to protect or prevent drugs and people and other things from coming illegally into our coastal waters. So again, a very important agency. And all of these things is nothing except FEMA, probably, that the Democrats care for. So all of these things are going to suffer, and the biggest one that's gonna affect Americans, of course, in their everyday life is the Transportation Security Administration, the TSA. It's already, I mean, it's not like you have the most dedicated workers in the TSA, but if they're not getting paid, they're going to start calling out of work. And if they start calling out to work, you can expect to see long lines at the airport the longer it goes. So essentially, people have to start getting, you have one TSA agent for, Atlanta airport, the one guy who didn't call in, you're gonna have 5.5 hour wait times, right? It's gonna get crazy if they continue to let it go. So TSA acting administrator Hanwin McNeil said in appropriations hearing, quote, TSA saw an increased rates of unscheduled absences and localized spikes in wait times as the shutdown dragged on and the cost of coming to work became more and more untenable to our frontline workforce. This is him talking about the last shutdown. We heard reports of officers sleeping in their cars at airports to save money on gas, selling their blood and plasma, and taking on second jobs to make ends meet. And it's interesting, I've talked about this in the last shutdown. There's the same thing applies, right? So this just happened. I'm guessing they may have gotten their mid-month paycheck. If they got their mid-month paycheck, they're not going to technically work without pay until the beginning of next month. So essentially 2 weeks that you're going to have before you have any serious consequences. And one of those 2 weeks, guess what? As I said, Senate's taking a recess. They're gonna be breaking. They're gonna be chilling. They have 2 weeks to negotiate this thing, and they're just gonna take a break for one of those weeks. That's the mindset that these people have. John Thune should have said, Democrats, if you don't want to fund it, you're not going anywhere until we figure it out. But he said, it's like, yeah, let's go on it. Let's go on a vacation, guys. Let's go on a recess. Go back. Go to some parties back at your districts. Remind them that you're still on their side while we can't find funding for a department that literally is responsible for the security of our country. What's important to that? Yeah, it can't be important. Coast Guard, Border Patrol, ICE. Those aren't important agencies. We go take a vacation. That's the mindset. Again, this is where, again, I don't blame the Democrats here, because if you're a Democrat and you look at the Democratic Party, whose job right now is to make Donald Trump look as bad as possible and the Republicans to look bad as possible in order to win the midterms and then win a presidency in 2 more years after that. Your sole job is to make the Republicans look bad. And this is a great example. This is a great opportunity to do that if you're a Democrat. If I'm a Democrat, if I'm a Democrat and I'm sitting on the House or Senate, I ain't voting for nothing. I literally ain't. There's nothing the Republicans could offer me that would make me vote for this, because I want this shut down, right? And I know I can solely, I think it's going to be pretty easy to throw the blame for this on the Republicans. When the TSA lines start getting long, I'm just sitting back, waiting until midterms. If I'm a Democratic representative or senator, I said, let those lines get long. Let's do this. Let's have no TSA, and really, let's just shut down the airports. And then, unless the Republicans cave to everything, but I won't do that. I wouldn't even consider. And I'm sure the Democrats are thinking about this strategically. I wouldn't even consider your proposals till at least 2 or 3 months in. And then maybe we can talk. And then only if you give me everything that I want, including no masked agents, including extremely hard and almost impossible for them to get warrants, no roving patrols. Let's just put all the agents' names on a database so everybody can see it. Why not do that? Why not just put every single agent's name and picture and a biography and their home address on a public website so people can see their ICE agents who are there for them, right? Let's just put that out there and just see what happens, right? I mean, that's how I would just ask for everything, and I wouldn't budge until you gave me everything, because again, what card do the Republicans have? And maybe I'm missing something. If I do, you're free to call in and let me know if I'm missing something. But what card does the Republicans have to negotiate this? They have nothing. Everything is on the Democrats here. They have all of the cards, because Republicans say, "Oh, we'll give you this. We'll hold this back if you don't give it to us." No, there's nothing. They funded everything else. So there's no give and take. The one thing they didn't fund is the one thing the Republicans need. It's the one thing, funny enough, right? One of the biggest things, the reason Donald Trump got elected. The reason he got elected was to protect the border and to get illegal immigrants out. That was one of the major reasons. And that was what he ran on. And now the Democrats have an opportunity to almost completely shut that down. How can you can't pass that up if you're a Democrat. The one thing that the people support Donald Trump on, and the one thing that he has done well on, we can shut the whole thing down. It doesn't get any better. That's the best gift. That is the best gift that they ever could have given. The Democrats. And if I'm a Democrat, man, I'm just like, my 1 week recess as a Democrat, I am enjoying the whole time. And I'm talking to my constituents about how we're sticking it to the Trump administration. We're not going to fund DHS. We're going to get those guys out of. We're going to get ICE out of everything. We're going to make sure that they're not coming down the streets and arresting people. We're going to make sure all of that is gone. And we're going to make sure this, and you'll see just how bad Trump is. And we'll let the illegal immigration. This is how they can win, right? And it's quite a good strategy, because they win either way. They win because it's a great political move in that they show the incompetence of the Republicans. But if it continues to, again, the longer this continues to go on, the more effect it's going to have on Americans. First, the TSA, but then the more effect it has on ICE. The more and more agents who can't work for free that drop out, then the immigration becomes a problem again, and there's nothing that we can really do about it. They can call in the military, right? They can call in the military to protect the borders. There's always that, I guess. The military, there is still authority under the military to protect our borders. In fact, that was one of the original parts of the reasons the military exists. So Trump could tap into that. But again, the military is not really here to make arrests. They're not here to really go into the cities to make arrests. Not what the military is designed, nor is it legal for them to do under the Posse Comitatus Act. So, you can probably have border protection without DHS. You can have the border protection with the Army. They can replace Border Patrol agents. In fact, most other countries, it is the military that protects their border. It's not the Border Patrol. They actually have the Army at the border. They actually have soldiers at the border. So that's something that they could possibly do. But ICE, I mean, they can really make it difficult. I think, I'm thinking politically, it's going to be very hard for the Republicans to try to put this on the Democrats, because they signed it. I mean, they signed the agreement with them. They gave it to him. Of course, this comes after ICE has, after Tom Homan announced that ICE this past week is leaving Minneapolis. And there's reports that the Minneapolis police are start working with ICE, so it's not a complete loss. But that's not a great look when you have that. Essentially looks like they run with their tail between their legs. And then you have this, and then there's no funding. These are two huge losses for the Trump administration and Republicans in general. Because again, as much as some Republicans want to fight Donald Trump, you are tied to him. He is your president as a Republican. And if you don't support him and you don't support his policies, it's going to look bad on you. Because here's the thing, and that's why with these Republicans that want to fight Trump too, which blows my mind, is if you think about it, right? If you say, "Oh, I'm going to stand up to Trump," right? Liz, what was her name? Liz Cheney, right? I'm going to stand up to Trump. I'm a Republican and I think he's doing wrong, so I'm going to stand up to him. Okay, great. You stand up to him. Do you think that the people who don't like Trump are all of a sudden going to vote for you because you're still a Republican? No, they're going to vote for a Democrat over you. So you gain yourself nothing by doing that, by thinking you're taking the high road politically, right? They're just going to replace you with a Democrat, or in the case of like Liz Cheney, they're just going to replace you with someone who does support Trump because your constituents like Trump. It's a no-win situation if you fight him from a political standpoint, right? Not to mention the fact you're fighting Trump and he's going to make your life horrible too. But this this last legislation, Trump is just as bad as they are because he's the one who signed off on it. So maybe Trump has something up his sleeve. I don't know. Maybe they have something that I'm not thinking about, and they got something that they can go with. Now there is certain contingencies, right? It won't all be doom and gloom, because under the big beautiful bill, there was several money that was set aside for DHS, or for ICE, I believe, that was set aside. So it essentially, they could, they could tap into that. So there's that. And those are for specific purposes. So maybe they can last it a little bit longer. I don't know, exactly how long that's going to last them. But the other thing I wanted to mention, in regards to this, is again the coverage of this in DHS employees versus the first government shutdown. They're like, oh, we're gonna have to put up the food banks for the we're gonna have to put up the food banks for the federal employees who can't live, and all this other stuff, right? And it was the worst thing ever. And then now, it's interesting how they're saying it, because I was reading an article by The Hill, and as they say, they're saying something that I said about the first one, which is true. But this wasn't mentioned. They said there is some time though before DHS employees feel the impacts of missed pay, lessening the pressure on both the workforce and on lawmakers to get a deal. The next paycheck deposit date for federal workers not until the end of February, which is what I said. And that's a true statement, but that wasn't said in the first one, right? Like liberal organizations like The Hill weren't saying, oh, they still get a paycheck for the next 2 weeks and any of that stuff, right? That just wasn't said. And now they're saying, oh, DHS employees, they'll be all right. Right. Like no one, we like the other federal employees, we don't like DHS employees. Right. So it'd be interesting. The only thing that will maybe turn this around is a major disaster, because FEMA is unfunded. But this has been timed in a place where we're not really in tornado season. We're not in hurricane season. There's not a whole lot of natural disasters that are happening, around this time of the year. The same thing with wildfires. It's not a big time for wildfires. It's more of a summer thing as well. So again, the fact that FEMA is unfunded. Now, FEMA does a lot of work that people don't see. That it's not just for natural disasters, right? They do support for things that are, I say national disasters, what I should say. They do things for things that are local, right? Local fires, local things that happen, right? They go in there. But again, those local things, that's not going to affect the midterms really. So the Democrats, as I said, are completely have all the cards. Again, unless I'm missing something, and maybe I'm missing something big, and I hope so. That the Republican, that the Trump administration has got something up their sleeve, because as it stands right now, the Democrats have no reason to negotiate, no reason whatsoever until Americans feel the pain a lot more. The ICE is completely running out of money, so they can't do any operations. So let immigration run rampant. Let illegal immigration run rampant, and let TSA lines go on for hours. And then all you got to say is, look at what the Republicans and the Trump administration do. Look how they run government. It's not very effective, is it? He told you to keep everything safe. Now there's illegals running around again. He couldn't do that. And when he tried to do it, he just violated everybody's rights and killed people. So they can't do that. Number two, look at your local airport. You can't even take a flight unless you get there 4 hours early. That's the Trump administration. I mean, the commercials write themselves for midterms. So it's just, like I said, I'm very curious what the Republicans are going to do, because the Democrats, from the Democrat strategists, they should be licking their lips, because this is everything that they have wanted. And if they're smart enough, they're going to make sure that they act on it. All right, we're going to take another break right here. We get back with a short time before the top of the hour. If you want to call in, 601-879-0002. Keep it tuned to The Full Story on WYAB 103.9. All right, gentlemen, welcome back here to the full story on WYAB 103.9 as we have this short break between we get to the top of the hour. At the top of the hour, we will have Joe come to us a little bit of some sports updates with the Olympics and everything that's going on with that. And then after that, we're going to get into the SAVE Act, another thing where Republicans, I think, are kind of missing the boat on something. One of Donald Trump's key legislations on election integrity and where they're failing in on that. If you want to call in anytime during the top of this, during this break, you can call it 601-879-0002. But I'm going to leave you here in the last few seconds. It is Valentine's Day with Van Morrison's Crazy Love. So we'll get back right at the top of the hour. So keep it tuned here to the full story on WYAB 103.9.
From 1,000 miles, yeah, the heavens open every time she smiles. And when I come to her, that's where I belong. Yet I run into her like a river song. She gave me love, 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 crazy love. She gave me love, 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 crazy love. She got a fine sense of humor when I'm feeling low down.
This is CBS News on the Hour, your home for original reporting.
I'm Allison Keyes. There are still no arrests in the case of Nancy Guthrie. She's the mother of Today Show co-host Savannah Guthrie. CBS's Andres Gutierrez reports from Tucson.
A flurry of police activity not far from Nancy Guthrie's home late Friday night. SWAT vehicles and forensics teams streaming in and out of this neighborhood, where authorities say law enforcement activity is underway at a residence. About 2 miles from there, the FBI and sheriff's deputies investigating an SUV in a restaurant parking lot. It has been 2 weeks since Nancy Guthrie disappeared in the middle of the night.
There's a partial government shutdown now that lawmakers have left Washington without coming to a deal to fund the Department of Homeland Security. TSA employees are working without pay, but ICE is still funded. Democratic State Congressman Adam Smith and others in his party want changes in immigration enforcement procedures.
Protection of the rights of all Americans to not be subject to the type of violence, coercion, and detention that Trump has unleashed on America through ICE. You're damn right it's worth standing up for.
President Trump is continuing to lie about the 2020 election being stolen and is using that to pressure lawmakers to support the SAVE Act just passed by the House. It would implement strict new rules for voting that Democrats say would disenfranchise millions. CBS's Willie James Inman.
Separately, President Trump is pushing lawmakers to support legislation that would call for voter ID. Posting in a True Social post, he said, if we can't get it through Congress, there are legal reasons why this scam is not permitted. I will be presenting them shortly in the form of an executive order.
President Trump has more on his agenda, as CBS's Linda Kenyon reports from the White House.
The National Portrait Gallery displays painted portraits of all U.S. presidents after they permanently leave office. President Trump's portrait was completed in 2022, but he returned to office, and now he wants a new one. For the time being, a photograph of the president is on display at the National Gallery. This is a tradition until a presidential portrait is commissioned.
Democratic Maryland Congressman Jamie Raskin is raising an alarm about conditions at the ICE facility in Baltimore. He says it is staggeringly overcrowded and that more than 55 people have been cramped into holding rooms for days. Raskin says there's only one toilet in the rooms and detainees don't have access to showers and people are sleeping on the floors. Some lawmakers have sent a letter to ICE. ICE has previously denied the allegations of inhumane conditions and said that it is complying with federal law. This is CBS News.
Join Adriana Diaz and Kelly O'Grady for the perfect start to your weekend. Ease into your Saturday with CBS Saturday Morning on CBS and streaming on Paramount Plus.
Attention! Have you racked up $10,000 or more in credit card debt? Are you barely getting by making minimum payments? With credit card debt reaching all-time highs, National Debt Relief is notifying consumers about significant debt relief options currently being made available to help those with overwhelming credit card debt. These options may reduce a large portion of credit card debt for those who qualify. You don't need to declare bankruptcy or take out a consolidation loan, and you may only have to pay back a fraction of what you owe, even if you have bad credit. National Debt Relief has already reduced the credit card debt for more than 550,000 consumers.
Can you hear me?
Yes. How's it going?
Good. I thought we'd talk about your the story there about Chambliss. Also, I just want to mention it was pretty big news story yesterday with Elian Malkinen and his failure. He's one of the biggest favorites going into the Olympics, and then just completely flopping on the long program. I don't know if you saw news about that or heard about that.
I saw that he finished 8th place.
Yeah. But it's just a huge. I saw it, and because I've been watching. I love the Olympics, so I watch as much as I can. And I saw him. I saw his routine, and it was. So I just want to mention that at the top, because it was a pretty big upset. Probably the largest upset in probably a long time in any Olympics, in winter or summer Olympics, because he was that much of a
Yeah.
fan.
Who ended up winning the gold?
The guy from Kazakhstan. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. It was
Wow.
Kazakhstan, and then Japan second, and Japan third as well.
Wow.
So, I mean, good. It was a good routine by Kazakhstan, but again, it was a good silver medal routine compared to Malkinen. It was Malkinen's thing to lose, but
Yeah.
But yeah, I just wanted to talk about that briefly, and just about sports, about how anything can happen. This guy, he won 13 of his last 13 competitions, and then he gets the big one and loses.
It's kind of like 07 Patriots. with
Yeah,
the undefeated season.
exactly. It is like the 07 pay. That's an excellent analogy, because it was, and just coming in as favorites as they were, just like the Giants weren't supposed to win, but
Won everything but the one that counted.
yeah, exactly, the one that actually matters. But the thing with Olympics, you got to wait 4 years.
Oh yeah.
We're about to get in.
Okay.
It's time for the full story with your host, Matthew Bishop. Matt's back on the WYAB airwaves. And now, the host of the full story, Matthew Bishop.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back here to the full story on WYAB 103.9 as we get to our second hour. Of course, a very busy first hour talking about the Nancy Guthrie case, and really just the coverage of it more than anything. Because again, it takes all of 30 seconds to give an update. As you could hear there at the top of the hour, the CBS News, again, just talking about it more and more and more, as well as talking about the funding of DHS. We're going to start with the sports segment here, but when we get done with that, we're going to go right into the SAVE Act right after this. And I just want to mention that here at this part, because you hear the coverage of the news. I think if you heard from there at the top of the hour, just how biased they can be in their coverage. Again, it's not your job to make opinion, especially if you're just giving hard news. You can say things and how someone puts it. So, for instance, in that top of the hour, you hear Donald Trump, who continues to lie about the 2020 election. That friend is an opinion, right? And you could say something such as Donald Trump, who continues to contend that the election in 2020 was stolen. You could say that instead of saying something as a lie. That's what we call in the legal field. We call that an ultimate question, right? So like someone can't say if someone's guilty, right? They can't give the opinion that I think this person is guilty. That is an ultimate opinion. You can put the facts out there, right? You can say what the facts are, but to come to just saying outright he's guilty, he's lying, that's just, you lose all credibility that way. And that's why the news, especially there at the top of the hour, you're supposed to be Just the facts, man. Just the facts. And talking about just facts, we got our sports guy here, Joseph Jones, who gives us just the facts when it comes to sports. Sorry, I couldn't talk. And a couple of big stories, Joe. First off, I talked about at the top of the hour, the huge upset here at the Olympics, probably the biggest upset of the Olympics, both in either summer or winter Olympics, which was the kind of the flop of Ilian Malkinen at the in the long program. I mean, have you heard about that story? And what are kind of your thoughts about that?
I saw the headline yesterday. Saw that he ended up finishing 8th place, and I know we were talking before the show just the magnitude of this upset. I likened it to 07 Patriots against the Giants in the Super Bowl. The Patriots winning every game but the game that counted to win the Super Bowl. Giants upset them. Another thing, even though this didn't happen, I feel like this is like the equivalent of some of those great UConn women's teams in basketball under Gino Auriemma.
Mm-hmm.
Had they lost, when they were undefeated in the championship game, it would be kind of on this level.
Yeah, that's the great thing. He won his last 13 consecutive competitions. And when he wins these competitions, he does things that if you're not familiar with who he is, he does things that no other skater has ever done. He does something called a quad axel, which is just absolutely ridiculous. No one can even try to attempt it. And when he wins competitions, he usually wins them by 20 to 30 points. Like, he's not even close his last 13. And then he gets on the biggest stage and just flops. He just falls everywhere. It wasn't just him. The guy before him, who was the silver medal favorite from Japan, fell multiple times. In fact, at one point, it looked like he even forgot how to skate. He literally tripped while skating. It's just funny. It's just interesting how that pressure of these big games can really get into in some of these guys' head.
Oh yeah, like just the pressure of the situation. You made a good point too before we got on the air that you only have every 4 years for this type of opportunity, and for some people it may just be a once in a lifetime, literal opportunity. You may not get a second Olympic opportunity, and so I think that just adds to the pressure of the moment.
Yeah, and it's just that's the thing. You screw up and in the World Series, okay, you can come back next year. You screw up in the Olympics, it's 4 years. It's half a decade almost before you get to make it back. But Malkin is a great skater. This is what tests your resolve at certain points. The fact that you got to think and sit on this for 4 years and then watch other people get those medals. He did win a gold in the team competition with the USA, so he does have a gold, but it's not what he came there to win. He came there to win the gold, the individual gold. And to not even podium, to see it, you see how someone comes back. I mean, the guy is only 21 years old. He's only going to get stronger over the next few years, but it'll be interesting to see how he actually comes back from that. But speaking of coming back, there is a big comeback in a different way for Trinidad Chambliss with Ole Miss, as he has a lawsuit against the NCAA. So what's going on there, Joe?
So there was a hearing on Thursday in Calhoun County Chancery Court. The case was filed in Lafayette County Chancery, and they were in Pittsburgh for that hearing. And Chancery judge in that district with the lawsuit against the NCAA granted a preliminary injunction that will allow Chambliss to play in 2026 for Ole Miss. Previously, I think on 2, maybe 3 occasions, his appeal had been denied by the NCAA themselves. And so his attorneys filed this case in Chancery Court, and they basically had the case predicated on contract analysis, talked about him not being granted a medical red shirt for the 2022 season when he was ill and could not actually play in that season. The NCAA tried to claim that there wasn't enough evidence from the school that he played at the time, Ferris State, which is a Division II school in Michigan, that they didn't have adequate practice logs and records to show whether he actually could have practiced or participated in practicing. But at the same time, as I've often told clients in actual cases, nobody lives their life preparing for litigation. And so I don't think it's far-fetched that a Division II school, who never in their wildest dreams would have imagined that their quarterback, or at the time backup quarterback, would one day be an SEC college football superstar, would have necessarily had these records preserved. But anyway, all the testimony and the evidence from Chambliss and the doctor, his mother, that won the day for the judge to grant the preliminary injunction and allow Chambliss to play this coming season. It's obviously huge news on the football field for Ole Miss, but the greater after effect is going to be what this is going to mean as far as implications far-reaching for years to come when it comes to eligibility appeals and lawsuits against the NCAA.
Well, so essentially the basis of this is saying that he essentially should have been redshirted a year when he really wasn't. So again, for a lot of people who aren't familiar with that, so essentially a player can what they call redshirt, meaning he doesn't play, he gets to practice and he gets to learn the school, like what they call a redshirt freshman, for instance, and their freshman year is really their sophomore year. So they essentially get at least 5 years of eligibility. And so again, this guy started playing for a Division II school, so he didn't have the typical, like I said, he didn't come up and he didn't start with the SEC school. He didn't start with even, like I said, any Division I school, So it's interesting to see, how they come back here, and the fact that he wanted to stay another year. But Joe, this brings up an interesting fact of, we're getting to this point where college sports, college football, I should say, especially probably college basketball too, but especially college football is essentially becoming a professional sport. And we talked about this, I think, last week or maybe a week or so ago about the NBA player or the G League player who sued to get back into the NCAA once he only played 1 year of college, and then coming back. And then we talked about people like Tim Tebow coming back to the Florida Gators, because he needs a PhD. But like I said, how long is this requirement? You think of students and eligibility years? I mean, is this? Do you think there's going to be a time when this is no longer a thing? It's not like they go to class.
Yeah, I think at some point enough athletes like Chambliss are going to push back, because last year we saw the Vanderbilt quarterback Diego Pavia get a similar injunction for different reasons, but he claimed that his junior college eligibility should not count towards his 4-year college SEC eligibility, and so that gave him another year at Vanderbilt. And so I think you're going to see people just continuously now going forward is the implication for this, push back against the NCAA in local favorable courts, get injunctions. The attorneys will tie it up, in appeals long enough to prevent any type of permanent decision where it will allow the players to be able to play. And if that happens enough, eventually the NCAA, I think, will just kind of have to throw their hands in the air. And I think that the contradiction, I think I told you before, that's always frustrated me. Now, I'll preface by saying that I don't necessarily like the current climate with college athletics, as far as I wish we could go back to some of the previous days when players stayed for 4 or 5 years at the same school. I don't really like all this player movement, but the contradiction has always been, if you're going to be a professional model when it comes to everything else, if you're going to take TV revenue from games and profit off of that commensurate to the NFL, if the coaches are going to make the money of NFL coaches and be able to leave anytime they want to, if the stadium sizes and prices are going to be almost to the level of professional, if not bigger sometimes, like, you can't do all of that and then say that the players can't have that same freedom. That's the contradiction here. And that's the trap that the NCAA is in. They've got a model that they claim is still amateurism, but it's not, because of everything else that we see. And with the players getting paid, it's completely out the window.
Well, that's the thing, is that it's not just players, but it's the school themselves. Like you said, sign someone to a 4-year contract, right? And then another school can buy them out from you, just like you can, or you can trade, right? Instead of this, I've talked about the whole transfer portal, which is the worst idea ever, because it's worse for all parties except the players. It's worse for fans, worse for schools. And the fans is what matters, right? Fans is what that's who your customer is. But I think what you're going to be seeing is this change from, SEC schools to these big schools becoming essentially, like you said, professional programs. And then you have things like, what's that small Christian college you have there in Hattiesburg?
William Carey University.
Yeah, like William Carey. Like those are where your college sports are really going to last, right? Those kind of football games is where like the true essence of amateurism is going to be, in places like that. Instead of your SEC, because again, these guys can play 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years, and you only feeder programs will be community colleges. Those smaller colleges is where your true college experience is going to be.
And it really wouldn't surprise me too if you eventually saw a day where some of the SEC and Big Ten teams abandon some of the other sports and mainly just play football and basketball primarily, maybe a couple of other sports. But I could see like the smaller colleges be the ones that like offer, the track and the soccer, and the field hockey and lacrosse. I think that you could eventually see that.
Well, that's this brings up maybe a topic to discuss in more length in a future one. But you just sparked something in me when you said that, which is Title IX, right? So Title IX, Title IX of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, for people who aren't familiar, is that essentially you have to have equal opportunity in scholarships for men and women in colleges. So what that means is that usually because football has so many scholarships, right? Because there's so many people that play football, there has to be more, and women don't play football. There has to be more women's sports in college to make up for the lack of scholarship opportunities for females in football. But if you go to a model of football is no longer scholarships, it's just straight up being paid, how does that affect Title IX? And again, how does that affect women's sports in colleges? Because that what you just said, is an interesting point, and how that affects, again, sports that aren't typically money makers, which unfortunately is mostly women's sports, and how that affects them. Or again, is it going to be women's sports that's going to be more that collegial aspect and not the men's sports, unless you go down to a thing. So maybe that's a topic we need to investigate. We need to investigate further in a future show. But that brings up a interesting thing I didn't think about till you said that.
Yeah, I just wonder, just about all of the impacts that we're going to see, come out of lawsuits like this, and just the changing landscape of the NCAA. It's just so drastically different, than what it was 6 or 7 years ago. Of course, I guess the world is obviously in general, but it's really interesting, this type of case. And it was really fascinating to see, a smaller community like Pittsboro, Mississippi, I think a population of maybe 200 people, kind of be the epicenter of college football on Thursday.
Yeah, I could see the NCAA wanting to change venues for a lot of these, trying to bring it up to federal court because of that, right? Those local judges are not going to rule in the NCAA's favor ever, especially since that judge probably went to Ole Miss. I can almost guarantee it.
He did.
Okay.
Law school.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, most of those guys went to Ole Miss Law School, so I can almost guarantee that he did. All right, Joe. Well, appreciate you you joining in. Where can people find your law firm?
Well, law office of Joseph Jones. You can Google us. Located in Petal, Mississippi. Contact us. Love to see if we can help you. And thank you so much, Matthew. As always, appreciate it.
All right, Joe. All right, guys. We appreciate you coming in. All right, guys. We're going to take another break right here. When we get back, we're going to get right into the SAVE Act and where that is currently, and how it can make its way through the Senate. If you want to call in during the break, number 601-879-0002. But keep it tuned to the full story on WYAB 103.9.
YAB.
Broad Street King Cakes, pass that plate. Broad Street King Cakes taste so great. From Jackson Town to every state, bestkingcake.com, don't wait. Lines out the doorway, laughter in waiting in there somewhere from now till Mardi Gras. You know where to be. Or click that link and make your kitchen Bourbon Street. Broad Street King Case, past that place. Broad Street King Case, tastes so great. From Jackson Town to every state, bestKingCake.com, don't wait.
Ken here with Rapid Oil Change, a leader in fast service and fleet account maintenance for over 40 years, providing routine maintenance for most makes and models, keeping downtime to a minimum. We accept most local and national fleet accounts. Can't see at night? Headlights looking faded? Check out our newest service, the Bright Light Headlight Restoration Kit by Mighty Automotive, available now. Keep your vehicle ready for the road ahead. And remember, drive hard with Castrol Edge. Open 6 days a week with 6 locations to serve. Visit us online for specials and location information at oilchangems.com.
Hello, friends and neighbors. This is David Frederick. I'm here to tell you about the latest development here at Frederick Sales and Service in Brandon. In an effort to always bring you the very best brands, I am proud to announce that Frederick Sales and Service is Central Mississippi's newest dealer for Skag zero-turn mowers and products. We have deals on one of the industry's best brands of zero-turn mowers, Skag. You can buy now and pay later because 0% financing is also available at Frederick's. Come see our inventory. We're here serving you for over 3 decades in Brandon since 1993.
Your roof is constantly exposed to the elements, battling dirt, algae, and stains. But with Watkins Construction and Roofing Roof Wash Service, you can keep it looking like new. A proprietary rooficide treatment is EPA approved, safe, and guaranteed to prevent algae from coming back for at least 2 years. No harsh chemicals, no damage, no black streaks. Just a clean, beautiful roof that lasts. Call Watkins Construction and Roofing at 601-966-8233 or visit nomoreroofstains.com today.
Looking to make technology work for your business instead of the other way around? Visit brentech.ms today. From reliable network infrastructure and wireless internet to cloud or on-premise backups, Brentech has solutions that keep your business connected, secure, and running smoothly. Don't let tech headaches slow you down. Discover how Brentech can simplify and elevate your business at brentech.ms. That's brentech.ms. Brentech, technology made easy.
At Sandifer Orthodontics, we believe in family, tradition, and community. From kids to adults, Sandifer offers state-of-the-art orthodontic care with complimentary consultations, so everyone in the family can smile with confidence. Sandifer Orthodontics proudly supports Tri-County Academy and the Building on Tradition campaign, so a short drive to local businesses like Sandifer helps TCA thrive. Begin the journey to a beautiful smile at SandiferOrtho.com. Sandifer Orthodontics, Highland Village, Jackson, and Gateway Drive in Brandon.
When you want your pine trees to grow a little happier and a lot healthier, call on Holcomb Aerial Service. When your crops need dusting, think Holcomb Aerial Service. From the farm to your own pine forest, Holcomb Aerial Service will stimulate growth, eradicate pests, and preserve the value of your crops. Call Holcomb Aerial Service at 601-668-6200. That's 601-668-6200.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back here to the full story on WYAB 103.9 as we get to our next story. And what I want to talk about is the SAVE Act, the Save America Act, when it comes to voter integrity, or election integrity, I should say. So the U.S. House of Representatives this week passed legislation that will require voters to provide proof of citizenship as the midterm elections approach. The Safeguard American Voter Eligibility, or SAVE America Act, would require people to present a valid U.S. passport or birth certificate when registering to vote, as well as other things like military ID and a couple of other things. The proposal has raised concern among some groups, including married individuals who have changed their names and may not have matching documents. In a post on his social media site, Truth Social, Trump warned that there would be voter ID for the midterm elections, whether approved by Congress or not. And we'll talk about that in just a minute. Democrats say that the legislation disenfranchises eligible voters, while Republicans say it is necessary to prevent voter fraud. Now, the bill does face an uphill battle in the Senate, where it does not have enough backers, and Senator Lisa Murkowski, I can never say it right, of Maine, a Republican, has also come out against it. So let's talk about what are the requirements in the SAVE Act first. Before we talk about passing it, let's talk about what it is and are there concerns about it? What are the pros, cons, and is this something that is a good idea? And then we'll talk about the political side of it, which is, can it get passed? So essentially, like I said, the SAVE Act would require Americans to provide or to prove that they are U.S. citizens when they register to vote. It would also require a valid photo identification before they cast their ballots. Now, a lot of states already require ID, but this goes just a little bit step further. So first off, this is a federal requirement. It doesn't federalize elections like Donald Trump has talked about, where essentially the federal government run elections. It would just put certain federal requirements on federal elections. So what is a federal election? Federal election is things like U.S. House, U.S. Senate, presidential elections, those types of things. That's what is considered under a federal election. It's not going to talk about what you do in the state. So like I said, a lot of states require voter ID, but they don't require actual citizenship. Now, federal law requires you to be a citizen to be able to vote. It's just that there's nothing that when you register to vote that would require you to prove that you're in fact a citizen outside that you attest under penalty of law that you are in fact a citizen. So the bill, which is a renewed version of legislation introduced last year that was stalled, establishes a process for people whose names have been changed to submit additional documents to verify their identity. So under the legislation, election officials who register a voter without obtaining the required proof of citizenship could face criminal penalties. So right now, an estimated 21 million Americans do not have documents proving their citizenship readily available, and 2.6 million lack any form of government-issued photo ID. And that's according to the Brennan Center for Justice, which is a liberal think tank. So you take that with a grain of salt. So a Pew Research Center, however, found last year that 83% of respondents favored requiring all voters to show government-issued photo identification, including 71% of Democrats and 95% of Republicans. So it's a pretty universal idea to want to have voter ID. Like I said, this one is a step further in that it requires proof of citizenship at the when you register to vote. So at the registration process. So what does that mean? So let's just think about this again from a policy standpoint before we get into the actual process of getting a bill like this passed. So as I just talked about, the vast majority of people, 83%, including both Democrats and Republicans, require voter ID. And that is because legitimacy of elections is the paramount cornerstone of a democracy, right? Or a republic, right? Because if we don't have free and fair elections, then it's all a farce, right? And nothing matters. A people's voice doesn't matter. And that, my friend, will cause revolution, right? If people find out that their votes don't count. So that's why the vast majority of Americans are for voter ID. Like I said, this is more than just voter ID. And so there's this concern that it somehow is going to disenfranchise people. Now, here's the thing: if you pass a law such as this, then you have to have availability of people to get said documents, right? Now, I get it. I not everybody has their birth certificate at hand. I had to have it because I joined the military, so it was always there. And military ID is another way that you can improve citizenship. Not everybody has or is required to get a passport, which I understand. But if they're going to require this, that means you're going to have to either provide passports to people for free, right? So essentially anybody and everybody can go get a passport. Right now you have to pay certain amounts for it, but if you're going to do this, I think what the federal government has to do is provide free passports for all people. And then you could use that, that you prove your citizenship through that. Essentially you have to have some kind of citizenship documents. So I think that's, you cannot pass this law without something like that attached to it. There has to be some method for people to get their proof of citizenship for free. because again, voting is a right, not a privilege. Because of that, you should be able to get that for free. And I think that is something that they'd have to beef up the department for. They'd have to beef up the post office, all these other places that that process or put in passport applications. I will say I renewed my passport a couple months ago. Easiest process I've ever done. They've got a pretty good process right now. I'm not going to lie. I mean, I did it, paid for it. I got my passport in like 3 days. It was quite impressive, honestly. Now, if you did this, it would cause a rapid influx. So you're not going to get that. But you essentially have to have some kind of thing to support that for those things. And I think most people, as long as you did that, most people would be okay with it, because again, under the law, you have to be a citizen. So I think most people are like, okay, if you have to be a citizen, then you should be able to prove that you're in fact a citizen. And that would prevent all this, married women are disenfranchised, all this other stuff that they're saying because their birthday doesn't match their birth certificate. Just give a process and availability for free passports. That's the easiest way to fix most of these problems. And you can apply for it. You have to prove your citizenship at that point. States, you can already get your birth certificate for free. Or you may have to pay a processing fee or whatever. So it doesn't cost a lot to get those documents. So, the idea this is going to disenfranchise a lot of people. No, that's not true. It only disenfranchises people who don't have those things. But if you're born in this country, you have a passport. If you are a citizen of this country, you have citizenship papers. If you're not a born citizen, then you have citizenship papers. So this idea that it somehow disenfranchises all these people, I think is just way, way overblown. But there has to be a process for people to get these things for free. And there needs to be drives to get passports for all these people. I've been a fan of making elections secure but more easy. In this day and age, I think there should be. I've talked about it. There should be an option to register yourself where you can vote via your phone. Right? Use a camera on your phone; they can take your picture. If you don't want that, if you're afraid of government infringing on your rights, you can still go vote in person. But if you can't vote in person, everything we do in our cell phones these days is on there. Your phone is extremely secure, right? You have Face ID on phones nowadays. So you can register in person with your passport and get set up on essentially a voting app. I've been a proponent of essentially a voting app for a long time. So people don't have to upset their day to go vote. We need more people always to vote. More people voting is always a good thing. And we always have low turnouts in elections. And so if you just went one time to register to make sure you're good there, and then you confirm your identity on the app. I mean, if you've been on dating apps in the last however many years, dating apps require people to do that, right? They have to require their identity. They have to take a picture of your ID before they will allow you to do that. So there's all these options that are available to you that to make it easier but also secure. And it looks like we got a call coming in right here. You're on the Full Story.
Yes, I'm sorry I had to call in.
Yes, ma'am.
Normally, I think I agree with you 99.9% of the time, but please do not let people vote from their phones.
Okay, why so?
Phones can be hacked into. They can, people can steal. It's just like the voting machines. It just opens up. But anyway, I know everybody has their opinion, but oh my gosh, same day voting, let it be a 24-hour day. But anyway, please. Anyway, that's all. I just totally disagree with that. Paper ballots and everybody come to the polls. But anyway, I love your stuff. Otherwise, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. I appreciate
Bye.
it. And she's not alone. A lot of people disagree with me on that. That is my opinion on that. Is that is a little more outside of, I think, of a lot of people. But to someone, I will tell you, someone who's familiar with a lot of the security, I would say your phone is more secure than a lot of these voting machines. I trust that much more because these voting machines are running off old technology and everything else. We've seen them. We've literally seen them hacked. Anything electronic can be hacked, right? But same thing with paper ballots is that anything with paper ballots can also be, we just all of a sudden lost 100 votes, right? Oops, right? There's never going to be, right? Here's the thing, is that there's never going to be a 100% foolproof voting system. It's if you have humans, nothing is foolproof. But my point in voting by phone is essentially, again, you can verify identity, just like you do on many of the apps that you already have. And two, it provides, I think, with younger people, it's going to provide them an opportunity to be able to be more involved in the elections. And again, it's secure. Anything can be hacked, right? I'm not saying that. Because like I said, we've had voting machines be hacked, as the caller mentioned, but it's just one of those things that I want to open up. I want to open up availability of elections while keeping them secure. It looks like we got another call here. A lot of people on the voting by phone. You're on the full story.
Hey, how you doing this morning?
Good. About yourself?
Listen, don't they have an ID? You can go to Highway Patrol and get an ID if you didn't have a driver's license in Mississippi.
Yes.
If I remember correctly, you can go. Can you, if you they can, when you could go when they go through that, they got to prove they're a citizen. I don't know a lot about that, but
yeah, that's a good point. So essentially, we've tried to move to this with a lot of our IDs, with like the real ID. You got the little star on your license and things. And they do have that, right? So not everybody can get a driver's license for, several reasons. So again, that we've had this process of anybody can get a free ID at the Highway Patrol's office or any DMV. You just have to, provide your documentation. But I agree with you. It wouldn't be that hard to have that extra step of proving your citizenship when you get that, to have that little star, and you can use that to register to vote. That's not a bad idea at all. It's just one extra step we already have.
I don't know other states have it or not, because we don't live nowhere else.
That's right. Yes, sir.
Hey, you have a good day, sir.
You too. Thank you. But yeah, that's a great idea. It's not, like I said, the Democrats always put out that this is such a hard thing to do, when in reality, everything in our life, we have to have some form of ID almost, right? Can't go on a plane. You can't do hardly, like I said, a lot of your apps require it. I mean, it's just, you can't run this. You can't go around in life unless you're a homeless person. And homeless people have a right to vote, right? But if you're a homeless person, they can be able to get to their place to go and register and get their documents. In fact, it could all be done in one process, right? You come in to register to vote. If you don't have the proper identification in order to register to vote that's required under this act, then at that point we'll help you get that documentation. And I think what that gentleman says is a good idea, and that maybe they should broaden the SAVE Act to include things like real ID, right? Instead of saying you have to bring your passport, because to get a real ID, you have to essentially prove your citizenship. So that's what the whole star is, right? And you have to use that. You have to use a real ID to get on a plane nowadays, right? If you don't have a real ID compliant license, you're not getting on a plane. So all of these things, like I said, as long as it is provided to people at no cost, right? That's the key. So you have to provide funding for that, and an opportunity and a method for them to be able to do it. Then it should not be a problem. It should be very easily, readily accessible to them. So that is so a lot of good ideas there. But I think, like I said, the vast majority of Americans are for this. Right. So the Democrats, they have to watch out what they're doing. I think they're paying attention right now. They're looking to win for the DHS thing I talked about. So this is kind of a minor thing, because again, that's going to make Republicans look bad than anything else. But this would be a very big win for Republicans if they get something like this passed, and they got to get it passed. Whether it's this, now the Democrats are going to say they're not going to vote for anything. So it's not like you're going to be able to work a bill like I just talked about. Okay, let's think about different, like we talked about, like a lot of the callers talked about. Let's think about other solutions. They don't want to hear any solutions, right? They're just going to say no, right? They're not going to work with Donald Trump at all. So they need to come to things to think about, maybe change it up a little bit to make it a little bit more, maybe a tad more accessible. But the vast majority of Americans are for voter identification. So we're going to take a break right here. When we get back, I want to talk about the process of getting this passed and where it stands currently. If you want to call in during the break, number 601-879-0002. Keep it tuned to the full story on WYAB 103.9. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back here to the full story on WYAB 103.9 as we continue to talk about the SAVE Act. So as I said, it was passed by the House this last week. So now it's looking at the Senate. And right now, of course, every single Democrat has come out against it, including Senator Lisa Murkowski of Alaska and Senator Susan Collins of Maine. So you're also losing 2 Republican votes. So it's almost impossible. Especially you're not going to get over the 60 vote rule to get over filibusters. Now, Donald Trump has called on the Senate to get rid of the filibuster rule. And Senate Majority Whip John Barrasso of Wyoming told Fox News Digital that the Republicans would continue to press the voter ID as a common sense and to continue to try to put pressure on the Democrats essentially to get it. But that's not going to work. So like I said, with Democratic resistance and GOP Senator Lisa Murkowski's rejection of the legislation only leaves 2 options, which is to nuke the filibuster rule, which John Thune has said is not going to happen, or turn to the standing, or they call the talking filibuster. Now, it's important to understand that the whole idea of the 60 vote rule is pretty modern. It hasn't existed in a while. It used to, you had what we now call the standing filibuster rule, which was you can filibuster, but as soon as you run out of people, we're going to vote on it. Right. So you probably used to see people, standing up there for hours, reading like the Bible from Genesis to Revelation, things like that. Right. Just to waste the time. Essentially, you could waste the time for the Senate. So they said, hey, we're going to get rid of that. We're just going to say, hey, as long as you have 60 votes, you can't filibuster. So what John Thune is saying, he says he doesn't have the votes to get rid of the filibuster. Not enough Republicans would vote to get rid of it. So he may just say require a standing filibuster, which is an option. But the interesting thing is that why Senator Murkowski is against it. So she's against it. I think she's a little misguided in what she's thinking. I don't necessarily I don't disagree with how she's thinking, but she's misguiding in what she's thinking about it. So she's not saying, for the Democrats, she's not saying this will disenfranchise people, because it won't. She's not saying anything that. She's saying we as Republicans don't want to federalize elections, right? Or create federal requirements for elections. So she said, when Democrats attempted to advance sweeping election reform legislation in 2021, Republicans were unanimous in opposition because it would have federalized elections, something we have long opposed. Now I'm seeing proposals such as the SAVE Act that would effectively do just that. Once again, I do not support these efforts. So this is why it's important. And Donald Trump has now come out to say if the Senate doesn't pass it, he'll do it by executive order. And this is why, and I think that sets a very dangerous precedent if we change election rules by executive order. This is why it's important it gets passed by the House. So again, this would only apply to federal elections, right? Not state elections. States still run their own elections, your county elections, your city elections, your municipal elections. All that's run still by the local authorities. It just affects federal elections. Now, the reason Republicans are generally against federalizing elections, and not for a bad reason, right? Where Lisa Murkowski is coming from, is that essentially the Democrats could put in legislation saying you cannot check ID. That's against the law to require ID, and therefore for federal elections there cannot be voter ID for federal elections. They could rule that. However, that's why it's important we do it at the legislative level. So a president can't just change whatever, right, under executive order. That's why it has to be passed by the Senate and become federal law, because then it becomes a whole lot harder to change, right? Because then you have to get the House and the Senate and the president again. You have to have, again, all 3 houses to be able to change the legislation, which is not impossible, but it's a lot harder to do than just a Democrat president, i.e. like Gavin Newsom, saying, we're not going to have any requirements. If you put any requirements on there, you're breaking my executive order. That's what a Democrat could do. And that's why Republicans haven't been for federalizing elections. But something that's just as basic as this, and making sure that it's passed by federal law, something that's much harder to change, is so important. That's why I think Lisa Murkowski is a little bit misguided in that. I think her heart is kind of in the right place, but misguided in the application. Because if it's federal law, it's going to be much harder for the Democrats to change later on. Not impossible, but harder. If it's an executive order by Donald Trump, that can easily be just undone by the next president, right? And again, the fact that if Donald Trump has to make an executive order, that again makes the Republican Party look weak. It looks like he cannot get his agenda passed through when his own party controls the House and the Senate. So they got to figure out a way to pass this. Again, the majority of Americans are for it, right? It's not like it's a hard battle thing. I mean, a hard hill to climb. Most Americans are for it. They just have to craft a bill where they can get Murkowski on board, which I don't think would be that difficult. Just, talk to her a little bit. The whip should be talking to her to say, hey, let's work out your concerns here and getting it through. And if that means getting rid of the filibuster to pass it, so be it. But it needs to be federal law. And EO will do nothing for us. It won't help us. And, whether that is even whether a president's executive order will be binding on the states like that is also a legal question. So it'll be brought up. It'll probably be stopped before the midterms. It's not going to make a difference. It needs to be federal law. All right, we have to take a break right here. We'll get back. We'll have a short time before we end the show. But keep it tuned to The Full Story on WYAB 103.9. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back here to the full story on WYB 103.9. As we get near to the end of the show here, of course, it is Valentine's Day, so please appreciate that and be safe out there tonight. Of course, my Valentine is none other than Kamala Harris, because without Kamala, we would not have had a Donald Trump second term. So I'll be sending her a Valentine's Day gift. But all the rest of you, be safe with your partners. Enjoy your time with each other. And you know what? Maybe forget a little bit about politics tonight and leave it to the side and just enjoy one another's company. But I'll see you again until next week. But until then, my name is Matthew Bishop, and you have heard the full story.
She gave me love, 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 crazy love. She got a fine sense of humor when I'm feeling low down. Yeah, when I come to her, when the sun goes down. Take away my trouble, take away my grief, take away my heartache in a night like a thief. She gave me love,